So these, the two central figures in opposition to President Musharraf. How significant is it, therefore, that she tried to meet Mr. Chowdhury today?
I think it is significant. 24 hours ago, she was there behind razor wire, confined to her home. The moment that she's allowed to travel, she joins protests, and then she goes to try and see the deposed Chief Justice, a man who's been such a thorn in the side of the government here. It was his removal from office back in March which sparked the current political crisis.
Now, there are suggestions, James, that Benazir Bhutto, as I've mentioned, she is the only opposition leader allowed to do certain things. Others, because of the state of emergency, have to stay inside. They're not allowed to talk. Suggestions that she's been given special treatment. Why have those claims come about, and what would it mean?
That's certainly what other opposition leaders are saying. They're saying that it's a very different treatment for people from other parties. Yesterday, Benazir Bhutto was confined to her house for a day, but other opposition leaders are not confined in home. They're in jail. Matt McClure reports.
Benazir Bhutto is on the move once again, making trouble for General Pervez Musharraf at every turn. At the home of Iftikhar Chowdhury, she demands to see the Chief Justice the General sacked and put under house arrest. But police stop her from entering.
I've come to visit the Chief Justice of Pakistan, who's under house arrest. I had been told that the Chief Justice couldn't leave his home, but that he was allowed visitors. So I came to visit with him and to tell him that my party stood for the independence of the judiciary. But unfortunately, it seems that the regime has decided to put barbed wire and barricades to stop my visit to the Chief Justice. I'm calling for the release of the Chief Justice and all the judges of the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
In meetings with party workers, she plots a political course that could force Musharraf to restore democracy, hold elections on schedule, and perhaps put herself back at the country's helm. In a show of solidarity, Bhutto joins journalists in their protest against the week-old restrictions on what news can be reported and the total blackout of private TV news channels. Aside from Friday's house arrest, Benazir Bhutto has been free to move about and address gatherings like this despite emergency rule. Other opposition parties claim there appear to be two sets of rules, one for Bhutto and another for everyone else. Prior to the emergency, former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was refused entry to Pakistan when he tried to return from exile. Now, many of his supporters here are in jail. Others, like Salim Zia, are on the run, meeting journalists in back alleys, never sleeping in the same bed 2 nights in a row.
They are raiding our houses at night. We are getting the midnight knocks, and a lot of people have been arrested and put behind bars for maintenance of public ordinance or order. We feel that as if we are children of a lesser god, because we are not being treated at par with other people, and all our rights have been usurped.
Those charged with deciding who to detain insist they aren't playing favorites.
Intelligence agencies, they know all the parties, the big parties, the small parties, who can create a problem. We have all the list of their people, and we check them, and wherever we need for the arrest, we did that.
The government is promising emergency rule could end in a month. Not soon enough for political parties forced into hiding while Bhutto basks in the media's glare. Matt McClure, Al Jazeera, Islamabad.
Back to James Bays. Now, you mentioned the fact that the lawyers' protest in part led to the current situation, but General Musharraf also said the trouble in the northwest frontier in the tribal regions was one reason he'd introduced the state of emergency. What news from there today?
Well, I think some news that the situation is getting worse. We're hearing that 8 policemen have been abducted. We've also had an Al Jazeera team up in that area getting pictures of what's going on and showing the Taliban in control in large swathes of the Swat Valley. That's a restive area. It used to be a very popular tourist spot, but large parts of that now under the control of pro-Taliban fighters, and some opposition politicians here saying the state of emergency is being counterproductive. counterproductive, because what's going on is they're spending all their effort in the cities arresting politicians, human rights activists and lawyers, and not dealing with that problem.
All right, back in the cities again for Benazir Bhutto. James, what now?
Well, what's interesting is that she has been meeting this evening with foreign diplomats, with ambassadors from countries around the world based here in Pakistan. And opposition leaders, as you've heard in Matt's report, they're suspicious of why she's still allowed to move around when other opposition leaders are not, and they're in jail. One factor clearly is the international support she has, and particularly the support in the United States.
And James, just a thought from you about reaction to the government statement that the state of emergency could well be lifted within a month.
Yeah, that's certainly something coming from the Attorney General, who's putting a time frame on it. It's something I was told also earlier on by the Minister of State for Information, that the state of emergency will be short-lived, but we don't have an exact date when it's going to end, and I don't think they've set that date yet.
James Bays, thanks very much indeed, reporting live from Islamabad. Six American troops and 3 Afghan soldiers have been killed in an ambush in the east of Afghanistan. 19 others were wounded when their foot patrol came under fire. The troops had been meeting elders in the Nuristan province when they were attacked with small arms and rocket-propelled grenades. News from Africa now. In the Somali capital, Mogadishu, smoke from burning homes rises into the sky. The bodies of former occupants line the streets. There have been days of gun battles now between Ethiopian forces and their Somali opponents, and scores of people have died. This outbreak of bloodshed triggered when dead Ethiopian soldiers were dragged through Mogadishu's streets. Imran Khan has the very latest.
Once again, the Somali capital, Mogadishu, burns. Ethiopia and Somali government forces fanned out across the city, and fierce clashes broke out on Saturday as the death toll ran into the 20s. Eyewitnesses are claiming that all of the dead were a result of Ethiopian army fire. So far, 80 have died since the fighting began 3 days ago. Despite the clashes, some are saying that the government is in full control.
The government has stabilized many places in Mogadishu for the last 10 months or so, since they took control of Mogadishu.
The fighting will only make the humanitarian crisis worse. Already hundreds of thousands are homeless, and with this renewed violence, thousands more are fleeing. The government insists that it's in charge, but in the camps, that's of little comfort. Imran Khan, Al-Jazeera.
Covering the world here on this Al Jazeera News Hour, we move now to Georgia, where opposition leaders have been meeting members of the government. Anti-government protests were broken up by tear gas and water cannon on Wednesday. Then a state of emergency was imposed. Let's talk to Barbara Serra in our European News Centre. Barbara, this presumably some kind of effort to break the deadlock.
It is indeed, David. This meeting was held at the home of Georgia's Orthodox Patriarch, and the church still has a lot of influence in that country, and it was a symbolic gesture to hold the meeting there. Of course, the president has already agreed to early elections, which has helped diffuse the tensions between the two sides. Meanwhile, Europe's top rights watchdog, who we'll hear from in a moment, has called on Tbilisi to lift the state of emergency. Nick Clark sent this report from the Georgian capital.
On the fringes of Tbilisi, Givai Kelishvili is tending his animals as he has done for years. He and his wife Tsuri live on what they raise and grow, but now their livelihood is threatened. The expanding city means this area has become desirable, and authorities are cleaning up, demanding farmers sell their animals. Some say this is Saakashvili's authoritarian rule at work.
Our animals are our livelihood. Without them, we have nothing. We have nightmare that they are coming to take them away. An official spokesman said we had to sell the cows or they would be killed.
There are, of course, positives from 4 years of power. The president has seen off the cloying effects of the Georgian mafia. Construction is booming, roads have improved 100%, hospitals have been built. But there are claims of frivolous waste. The president apparently has a passion for fountains, and they've sprung up in cities all across Georgia. Opponents claim that increased wealth has not been passed on to the people. prices have doubled, but salaries have stayed the same. There's widespread unemployment.